So I want to open it up for some questions from some of you, and I'll take whoever raises their hand first. You win.
Would you please explain or talk about for a minute about your halations and when you started doing that, and what was that about? What made you do that, or what was the mistake?
Could you all hear the question? The question was, what made you start doing the optical color halations around the subjects? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the first word I have to use was accidental, because when I started painting those pictures at that time, I'd start with a yellow, fairly light lemon yellow line, and then a darker line, darker yellow, and then when I began to paint, some of that was left in first. But the other thing that happens, which is perhaps more reasonable, has to do with the physiology of our eyes and the way they function. Since we see two images and merge them into one, if you, and you can experiment with this yourself, put something like an egg on a sheet of paper under strong light and stare at it for a good long time, I mean several minutes. What happens is that those two views, which are merging, converging I guess, there is suddenly a kind of dissonance of some kind, which causes these edges to vibrate ever so slightly. They don't turn bright yellow or bright purple, but metaphorically, that's what you use in order to make a transition from the object to background and soften the relationship so that people don't look like stuck into this white, since I use this very strong white background. And in terms of, it isn't something that is an invention or anything. It comes in all kinds of painting. If you look closely at Peter Paul Rubens all the way to Van Gogh, you'll see that since he painted in strong sunlight a great deal, or on incandescent light bulbs over the painting, or candlelight, that when he painted, I'm convinced that he had that same experience, where his eyes, looking at a long time at something to get something right, he would see this slight variance. And to account for that, you'll notice in Van Gogh painting, very often he'll have a very nice cerulean blue line around the edge of a coat. And on this side, it'll be a nice bright orange going around. And I'm convinced that he got that in terms of, again, making that transition between the object and the negative space to coordinate that quality. I don't know if I'm right, but that's the best answer I can give.
Get that, all that.
I couldn't.
So in the late 50s at the state fair, she remembers that you were selling prints or paintings, and she wanted you to talk about the time in the late 50s at the state fair and what that meant.
We had an art in action booth. Is that what you're referring to, where we were making serigraphs so people could see how serigraphs were made?
Yeah, I was quite young, but my father talked about it. I don't know if you remember Ken Harvey. He had an orchestra. I don't remember.
Oh yeah, sure. I remember.
And so,
Dance band.
yes.
And what happened?
Well, he's gone, but how about that era? I was so curious to hear your side of what was going on during that time in the state fair.
Well, we were working in order to show people how serigraphs were made, and we would sell them to people if we could find anybody to buy them. It was a big sale if people could pay $10, but then, since nothing sold, we put them in what we called the buck tray. And Mel Ramos, Jack Ogden, Darryl Forney, Pat Delante, all those people were working in the fair booth making prints, and they also, in order to do that, we had to design the state fair and process the works that came from all over California and then hang them, display them. So this was a kind of bonus that they could work during the fair and make these prints. But they were all very, very hardworking guys, and we played together and worked together, and still are very good friends. And they've all gone on and had their own careers. Does that answer the question? I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Thiebaud, please, what motivated you to paint a dove?
Paint.
Marie Irwin has a painting of a dove.
Did you catch that? She said Maria Irwin has a painting of a dove. What motivated
Oh, a
you to
dove.
paint a dove?
That's yeah, because I wanted to paint one like Picasso. I never did make it, but did the best I could. Yeah.
Yeah, in the back, on the right, you.
Yes, I was in Kansas City a number of years ago and saw a painting of a woman in a swimsuit who had a sunburn. And the pain was so obvious on her face, and it was a green swimsuit, and her red skin was a great complementary color usage. It's probably your wife. I'm curious, did she really have a sunburn?
Betty, you're supposed to answer that question. No, she said she didn't have a sunburn.
As a fact.
Was that the Nelson Atkins painting? Is that?
No, it's at the Nelson Memorial Gallery in Kansas City.
Yeah, at the
that's
Nelson
cool.
Atkins in Kansas City. Yeah, that was another one of my favorites too. Who else? How about over here?
I was fortunate enough to be a student of yours in Davis, and I was wondering if you're still teaching. Are you still teaching?
Are you still teaching at the University of California at Davis?
Not at the moment, no.
I was one of your students a long time ago.
You had enough then, didn't you?
They made me graduate.
Go ahead.
I'm curious, when we were upstairs looking at the show, I noticed that during the 60s when you were painting, that a lot of your paintings they're very precise in their layout, and the brushstrokes were very deliberate seemingly. But then I noticed that there was a painting from 2010 where you were much more loose about the application of paint and the formality of the subject. And I'm curious, where that change happened for you.
Did you catch that? Should
Talking
I-
about the looseness or tightness,
Yeah.
essentially.
This is sort of interesting to me because when you were younger, one would have thought that you might have been a little bit more loose about your application.
One would have thought. Yeah, I think it sort of comes and goes, and you like, I think, to test, let's say, your ability to make a precise form, and in doing that, perhaps suggest to yourself how it can also be less formal or interpret into various modes of expression. One of the nice things about looking at painting is to sort of think about, as in a way you have alluded to, the idea of time. I mean, obviously painting is not like music with that kind of time, but time is suggested, interestingly. For instance, the difference in coded time, let's say, difference between two contemporaries, Rembrandt and Hals. It seems to me that the time which is expressed with Rembrandt seems almost timeless, like he's not going to go anyplace, that guy sitting there, or that beautiful woman at the casement door. She looks like she has been there a long time and is going to be there a long time. Compared with Franz Hals, who looks like he's getting a very candid moment, even a few seconds. There's that great painting of the Cavalier falling back on a chair. Looks like he's going to tip over. And that whole issue of time is one of the great problems that's worth addressing in painting. How can I get my painting to express a particular moment or second or fragment of a second in time? You might say, for instance, de Kooning drove a motorcycle by while he was painting. Compared with Ad Reinhardt, who painted a little corner in a cathedral, very dark corner, sitting there forever, eternal time. These are wonderful issues in painting that you don't want to miss. That's why art history, we've also got to teach that in high schools, junior high school, where kids have a chance to know what we were really like visually in history. What was happening? What was going on? What wonderful things were occurring? Well, painting can show us that and inform us and give us this challenge of taking time to look at what we're looking at. I love the movement of slow time, slow traffic, slow food, slow drinking, slow traffic. I mean, it's great to go 100 miles an hour, but it's also great to take your time. Oh, what am I talking about?
Particularly motif that you're particularly fond of?
Did you all hear that? Is there any one particular motif out of all the ones that he did that he's particularly fond of?
Well, I'd have to say no. I'm not a big fan of my own work, but I have a better way to end, maybe, and that is someone asked Matisse that question. All those styles you've been through, you went through very early periods of Cubism, Pointillism, and all through those beautiful fauve periods, and then these very late beautiful pictures, and the paper cutouts. Which one is your favorite of all that? And Matisse said, oh, should be obvious. What do you mean? It's the one on my easel I'm working on. That's pretty much the way it is.
Anything else you would like to add?
Nope.
Nope.
Give a round of applause to Scott, who did such a great job. I don't mean here so much as the great thing that he's done to get those things together upstairs.
Well, thank you
You
very
deserve
much.
a lot of credit. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.